Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, given the limitations of time, I'm going to try to speak just for about 15 minutes. And may I ask, Mr. Speaker, that when I have crossed the threshold of 10 minutes, you so advise me. Mr. Speaker, I just want to signal that it is with deep regret I'm not going to have the opportunity to listen to my distinguished friend from Babano when he replies, as I have to leave the House immediately after. Mr. Speaker, the resolution before this House makes a crucial declaration and an admission, what I think we lawyers will understand as a compellable admission. It says in the third paragraph, and whereas by resolution of Parliament published a statutory instrument number 27 of 2015, Parliament authorized the Minister of Finance to borrow from the Caribbean Development Bank an amount not exceeding US dollars $19,675,000. In other words, Mr. Speaker, this compellable admission is that this government was forced to admit by reference to that statutory instrument that this was a project created, designed, and for which the former government had obtained authorization to pursue. And may I, Mr. Speaker, put formally into the record statutory instrument number 27 of 2015. And Mr. Speaker, I will spare you the time listening to me read the entire statutory instrument, but I say to you and the clerk of the House that the entire instrument must be part of my record in this House of Assembly on this matter. But because of the exigencies of time, I will simply read out the third or fourth clause in statutory instrument number 27 of 2015. And whereas the Minister for Finance considers it necessary to borrow from the Caribbean Development Bank the amount of US $19,675,000, consisting of a special funds resources, SFR, portion of US $6 million, an ordinary capital resource portion of US $13,675,000 for the purpose of financing the redevelopment of the Vieux Fort water supply. And Mr. Speaker, as I said, I'm not going to go through the statutory instrument in all its detail, and I trust that the clerk, as the recorder Hansard, will appreciate my insistence that this be part of the official record of my contribution this afternoon. Why? Because it establishes without a single doubt that this was a project created, conceived by the former government, the St. Lucia Labour Party, who's constantly berated for all kinds of things. It saddens me, Mr. Speaker, saddens me that a project that had had prior approval, a project that a contractor was already selected, a project that a sod turning ceremony was held. For 3 to 4 years, I languished in this House every budget asking about this project. What has happened to it? I mean, where's the finance for the project? And what you would see were token amounts placed in the estimates for this project. And suddenly, the light of day prescribes, and the government of St. Lucia announces that they're going to have a sod turning ceremony. Now, you know, Mr. Speaker, it is these things that cause unnecessary political anger and disappointment in the country that we have to avoid. And it's not just a gimmick, it's a serious matter. A sod turning ceremony was held. You have the temerity to invite the member for Vieux Fort North and a member for Vieux Fort South for whatever the reasons may be, the member for Beaufort North decided he'll attend. I declined for the very simple reason. Why am I called to a second sod turning ceremony? For what reason? All the government had to do was to say that we are proceeding ahead with this project, and if they wanted kudos, and simply say, well, you know, we looked at the project, it has been approved, but we think that we need to do some more work. We're going to ask for an additional $6 million to strengthen the project. But you wouldn't hear that. You didn't hear that at the sod turning ceremony, Mr. Speaker. You wouldn't hear that. And you know what the preoccupation was? To give the public the impression that somehow they are the originators and creators of this project. It's like Wasco is on a mission, you see? They're on a mission to create the impression that not only do they create the project, and of course, to intimidate and do the rest of it in trying to build up a headquarters in Wasco headquarters, who everybody asks the justification for. But today's not a day for that. And if the honorable member is so kind and he speaks today and touches it, then I will be even kinder to respond to him at the appropriate time in the budget over the decision to do the headquarters. Mr. Speaker, there can be no question that this was a badly needed project, and there can be no question that the challenges, the difficulties that the people of Beaufort South have faced over the years had the opportunity of being resolved by this project, even with the first tranche that had been obtained by the former government from the Caribbean Development Bank. There is no doubt that there's a monumental problem of water supply in the south, and there are days the turbidity of the water is also quite high once, of course, you have very heavy and significant rains. And so, Mr. Speaker, this has to be a welcome project in every sense of the word. Let me, however, Mr. Speaker, proceed to make two other observations. You know, we are all parliamentarians in this House. All of us have obligations to people, to our constituencies. And you know, Mr. Speaker, whether we carry out the obligations satisfactorily or not, the people judge us when it comes to general elections, and all of us will face that judgment. But you know, there are universal values to which all of us should be committed. And there is, very unfortunately, in this country, a development that is causing me increasing concern. It has nothing to do with age. It's nothing to do with recognition or with looking for praise and for honor. None of those things. I'm not interested in that. What I'm interested in is recognition of the responsibilities and duties of parliamentarians to their constituents. If I choose not to attend a sod turning ceremony because it's a mockery, it was unnecessary, there was already a sod turning ceremony, there was no need to make a political point about it. That's a different matter. But I'll tell you what I'm concerned about. I'm concerned when both public and private agencies make an appearance in people's constituencies and they do not brief parliamentarians as to what they're doing and why. I'll tell you, Mr. Speaker, some 2 or 3 months ago, Lucilec embarked on some work in the Beaufort constituency to do what all of us knew had to be done at some point, and that is to extend the power supply from the solar farm to the electrical generating plant in the area of cantonment. We all knew that had to be done. Lucilec proceeds. They dig trenches on the St. Jude Highway, dig trenches going into La Richousse and that entire area, and never, ever, ever put out a press release, and listen very carefully, never, ever, ever put out a press release to say that they were undertaking these works until it became unbearable and became a hazard for motorists. I had to call Lucilec, Mr. Speaker, and say to Lucilec, well, look, you cannot do this. No one want to tell you don't carry out these vital infrastructural works.
Honorable members.
No one wants to tell you that. We are the ones who paved the way for a solar farm to exist. We understand. But at least explain to the residents of Vieux South that you regret the inconvenience that you're causing to them, the damage you're causing to their roads, and ask for some patience. And at least call a parliamentary representative and tell a parliamentary representative, we are going to undertake these works in your constituency. Now, these are things that as we go along we have to correct. Mr. Speaker, it's not just that. It's the same way this contractor, mind you, a contractor that had been selected well before the intervention of the government and attempted this bogus sod turning ceremony. Water supply is disconnected because they're laying pipes, etc., etc. Now, you'll tell me, of course, people must expect if you're doing that, that water will be disconnected. I have to deal with calls from my constituents. They have no water for 2 or 3 days. And then find my way down and, speak with the contractors and say, listen, what's happening? When are people getting their water back? These things really have to stop.
Yes, honorable member, you have 10
5 minutes. Okay, Mr. Speaker. Yes. And this is my point, that it is time that that kind of impunity. Of course, there will be members out there, oh, it happened in the past before. But I also remember the occasions when the opposition was fully brought on and involved, in the process of consultation. I remember when we approached Caribbean Development Bank to deal with the drainage problems in Bextor, there was open consultation, the minister was invited and he spoke at it. Nobody quarreled with that. Mr. Speaker, I recall when I assumed office, the plans were laid for the construction of this administrative complex, the financial center. I well recall, I didn't stop it, I could have stopped it, but I declined to do so because I saw its intrinsic value. I can't say where is the best place to put it. And I remember inviting the member for Castries North to come to the ceremony and to speak. Now, of course, he invited me to attend a sword turning ceremony, but a bogus, fictitious sword turning ceremony, just to create the impression among the people of Beaufort South, that it is a project. Mr. Speaker, I think you're amused. I can see you behind your mask. I think you're amused, but I want to tell you that really, that kind of fiction is unnecessary in our politics. And let me tell you, Mr. Speaker, you're not dealing with any ordinary member in the Honorable Ezekiel Joseph. This is a man of vintage years. He's like me. He's in that delicate phase of his life. And I just want to tell him that he mustn't fall for that kind of dishonor in the politics. There's a period of that he has to put his best foot forward and let honor now speak for him. And Mr. Speaker, yes, he is deteriorating, and that is what is worrying me. And I regret I can't say to him, Mr. Speaker. Now this disease, Mr. Speaker, of not informing parliamentarians is deeper than what I have described. In the public service, we have a problem. You write civil servants, you complain about issues, they don't have the decency even to acknowledge your letter and say your letter has been received, and to use the classic language of the public service, and it is under consideration. It can stay under consideration for years, but mind you, at least reply and say you got it. With few exceptions, there are public servants who do respond. But you can't run a country like this. And Mr. Speaker, they say that it's because you see the twilight of your years, you look back and so on, you say what you have to say. But I am slowly coming to the conclusion. And I think I have to give credit to the member for Labrie for this, because I remember him making that point many years ago, that someday we all need to sit as parliamentarians and draft legislation that establishes the rights, responsibilities, and entitlements of parliamentarians to guide our behavior in Parliament and what people expect of us and what we're entitled to. I'm not talking now of entitlements with duty-free, but what should be basic things that should be expected. So, for example, if ministers are going to tour your constituency for any reason, you are alerted. Whether you want to be part of their company or not, that is up to you. But you are alerted that such a minister is making an official visit to do X, Y, and Z. In fact, I had the honor, Mr. Speaker, of drafting a code of ministerial conduct and behavior for the government of Grenada in an earlier life while I was in opposition the last time. And those were basic rules that were enshrined in that code as to how you should treat your parliamentary colleagues on such matters. And so, Mr. Speaker, I end this contribution, I must say, with deep, deep regret because of the limitations of time, and I have to give way to my other colleagues. And Mr. Speaker, I repeat what I said. I really regret that I'm going to miss the contribution of the member for Balbano. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.